Well, I was going to do the same about you. So what's fair is fair, right?
I guess so. All is fair in
Well, I
love
can
and
go
war.
away if you want.
I don't. Just notice my mistakes and correct them.
I definitely will.
Right.
We are ready to
Wow.
start. Please
Great.
teach us. Yay.
Um, welcome. Where's my translators? Anastasia. Hello. Thank you. Octavian, you translating? Thanks, buddy. Uh, as always, please give me the universal slow down sign. My morning is hectic. I left my computer charger in my travels. My parents hid my coffee on me. It's all been a little crazy this morning. Um, today we have I feel like it's a podcast today. Today on ACI 9 podcast, our special guest will be Venerable Jigme. And I'm very happy that someone that actually knows about Vinaya will be speaking about Vinaya. Um, I don't know, Jigme, how long have you been ordained? 30 years?
A
35?
little bit more than 30, what's this? 33.
Yeah, wow.
But I'm hiding. You can't talk to me.
Uh, that'll be cool. And so please have your questions. I'm going to talk about the course content for 30 minutes. And then Venerable Jigme will talk for a little bit. And then there'll be some time for some questions. And actually, some people that aren't able to make it because they went on retreat, they wrote in some questions. And Jigme, I'm going to message them to you so you get a moment to think about them.
Sounds good. Okay.
I will direct message you in the chat.
Okay, cool.
So that's our plan. So I have some questions about her experience or Vinaya or um, making vows, anything like that, or anything. She's got a wealth of knowledge, and um, she's got so many stories. So we'll try to get through the material and get to the start of the show. But let's talk about the content a little bit. Today, the class it's all out of order. So technically, I think we're on class 5. It's the class 5 content, even though this is class 7. Translators, how am I doing? All right. So the class is about the process of going from unordained to ordained, and then the divisions of the ordination vows. It's an interesting class because often when Geshe Michael taught it, he's like, I'm not allowed to teach you these things. There's not a lot of details. Like he'll start explaining something and he'll just kind of stop. Like we don't really teach ordination vows in depth in classes like this. So it's a framework for what's in those ordination vows and the process. And at one point when he did teach it in depth was during our 3-year retreat. Um, he did teach Vinaya, and those teachings are fantastic. I believe it might be on the knowledge base. And then of course he's teaching Vinaya now in the Mixed Nuts translation. So there are avenues to study this topic more, and those are two of them. So how do you go from unordained to ordained? What's the process? As Geshe Michael presented in this course, it starts with the lifetime lay vows. So we'll talk about this in context of becoming a fully ordained nun, because there's an extra step. Start with the life lay vows. We studied those. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie. And to remember that the basis of all of the Vinaya vows and those lay vows is renunciation and refuge. Like, we have to have some sort of refuge, that life is questionably working. Like, at best, like, why can't I be happy, completely happy? Why do things never, like, why do my parents hide the coffee 5 minutes before class? I can't find the coffee. Why? You know, it's not the end of the world. I don't, I'm a little annoyed. Why can't life work out? Why are things dissatisfactory? On down to, you know, not my extremely privileged life, but what an absolute shit show it is for people that have real problems, that aren't about finding their ridiculously expensive coffee in the morning. So the idea of Vinaya is that we can be happy. And we need to understand that our actions dictate our perception. And because that canvas of the world is blank, everything we do, everything we say, everything we think creates an imprint on that karmic recorder of our mind. So it, you know, in some ways it's so simple. You know, yeah, we can be happy. What we do dictates what we see. And we go through Vinaya, we have to come back to that over and over and over. And we have to have mainly renunciation for any other worldview, or worldviews that don't work, and allow that to drive our refuge, because our refuge is what protects us. Okay? So there is suffering. Suffering is caused. Vinaya helps us avoid those causes. Right? And so we take refuge in the vows because the vows protect us. We take refuge in something that protects us, and that's Vinaya. It protects us from the self-harm in the form of non-virtuous actions. And that's the basis of the life lay vows. In the readings, it was Genyen Ma. Jigme, Genyen didn't seem right, but correct me if it's wrong. Genyen Ma for life lay vows.
Yeah, I think that.
Okay.
The only thing is that the vows are divided into male and female.
The life lay vows?
Yeah, they're the same vows for both.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Next, this was interesting, I thought. He added the Rabjung vows as a potential next step that not everybody goes through. And it's not we talked about it, it's not a formal pratimoksha vow. But one step one could take is the Rabjung vows. And we talked about that. I think my memory is that there's something like 8 vows that are part of Rabjung. How'd I do, Jigme?
There's sometimes it's 5.
5.
It depends on the Lama.
So those include it's not an ordination vow technically, but you wear the robes. There's a celibacy vow, I know that. And so that's a potential step 2. Now we get into kind of the more formal ordination vows. The novice nun vows. There are 13. They are very similar to the one-day vows. So I'm sure everyone remembered and memorized the one-day vows. There's 4 primary vows. Don't kill, don't steal, don't have sex, don't lie. 6 secondary vows. They're divided a little differently, but they are something about handling money, trying to give up luxury for a day, refrain from intoxicants. And this one is divided up differently. Giving up dancing, singing and dancing, giving up wearing flowers, like excessive ornamentation, and eating afternoon. And then there's if you recall, 3 transgressions. Disrespecting the person who gave the vows, keeping your lay appearance, the non-ordained appearance, and failing to take up the appearance of a monk or nun, wearing robes, cutting your hair short. I'm going to go through these quickly. They're in the reading. Okay, so if it's too fast, too much, it's okay. You can get it from the coursework. The next step, which I spoke with Jikme about it, she said in her experience isn't done so much, is the intermediate nun vow. It sounds like, Jigme, that those vows are taken for 2 years and then they disappear. Is that true, or are they lifetime vow?
Vows never disappear. They can be superseded by something higher. So, like if you're going from intermediate to full nun, then those vows are kind of I don't know, followed up by the new.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I can talk about it later. It's
Cool.
a little bit more
Right.
involved.
Okay, cool. I'm just going to keep going through it. And then you get your fully ordained, your Gelung fully ordained vows. Oh, okay, let's go through it again. Lay vow. Possible Rabjung vow. Novice nun vow. Intermediate nun vow. Geshe then talked about commitment to observe celibacy purely. Not as a pratimoksha vow, but a commitment taken before becoming fully ordained. And then number 6 is the fold ordination vow. Ask Jigme, read about it in the reading. Let's talk about the 5 categories of ordination vows for a framework. And I don't have good examples for these because I haven't been taught them. There are 364 nun vows and 253 monk vows. Those can all be placed into 5 categories.
Earle, should we run the PPT?
Yeah, let's run the PPT. There's Jigme. So here's the, oh, awesome. Here's the vows in each group. There's Jigme. Take a screenshot. Those are 364 things that a nun has committed to give up. Next slide. These are the 253 things a monk has committed to give up. That is me and Venerable Marut. At Diamond Mountain. Let's look at the next slide. Here's the 6 groups. That's Venerable Gyaltsen. The first group is called a defeat, meaning you're defeated by your mental affliction. These groups go from worst, most serious, less serious, less serious. They're in order of severity. The first group is called a defeat, Pampa in Tibetan. For those keeping track, there's 8 for nuns, 4 for monks. What talked about in some traditions, if you commit one of these, the vows they're smashed. And they're broken, like you lose your vows. He said, in our tradition, that's not true. They're just very damaged. You don't lose your vows, you just trash them. So they're damaged, not lost. It's a defeat because we've been defeated by our mental affliction. Okay. The second group is called remainders. There's 20 for nuns, there's 13 for monks. And it's interesting, it's a remainder because there is something left over. You still have something left over you can repair to get back on track, which seems to, say something about the first set of vows. Right? Is there not something that's a remainder for the first set of vows? As Geshe described it, yes. Yeah, and there's a there's a mistake in the slide here. If you perform one of them, there is the slightest bit of a vow remaining that can be restored. So it says there is not. So please note that the slide has got a big problem in it that I didn't catch. Sorry about that. So there is something, it's called a remainder because there is something that remains that we can repair. Make sense? Sorry about that. And I'll put the direct words from the answer key. Thank you, Jake, in the chat. Number 3 is called a downfall. Tungje, a downfall. Something that makes us fall down, meaning fall down to the lower realms. Geshe Michael, he said, look, we can't take the names too literally. To the first 2 categories, do they also not bring us down to a lower realm? Yeah. Well, don't take the names too literally. There's 2 groups of these. One is a downfall where we give something up. And the other is so there's about Geshe often gives us an example that a monk or nun is not supposed to keep a certain amount of cloth for more than a certain amount of days. And so you break this vow if you keep the cloth to make your robes for over, I don't know, it's 2 weeks or something. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jigme. And if you, and it's so if you keep that cloth for more than 2 weeks, whatever it is, you have to give something up, meaning that cloth, the attachment to that, and the cloth. Then there's the Tungje Ba Shik, simple downfall, where you don't have to give something up. I'm curious why this category is called downfall of release. There's 2 sections in it. One where you have to release something, one where you don't. Seems like a contradiction. In the downfall of release, there's a category of things you have to release and things you don't have. I need to study it a little more. Next slide. So the next one is a individual confession. Deeds you must confess individually. Go to someone, confess. Let's do the next one. Offenses. ENG. It's a simple, we did a thing that wasn't excellent. 112 for nuns, 112 for monks. That's the 6 categories. There's technically 5 categories. Geshe Michael broke it into 6. Those are the 6. I encourage you to do the reading. I encourage you to, look at the class notes. I encourage you to study it more. I don't want to spend more time on it in this class. I'd rather have us an opportunity to hear from Venerable Jigme. So I apologize for being very brief with those. It's great because I'm not an expert in them anyway. My favorite one was Geshe talked in our 3-year retreat. And I don't know which category, but there's a vow that you can't play with your food. You're not allowed to, I think the specific example is you're not allowed to make your rice in the form of a stupa. I don't know why that one always sticks out in my mind, but I love that vow. Don't play with your food and shape your rice into the shape of a stupa. I met Venerable Jigme really for the um, first time during Geshe Michael's 3 retreat. And there was a staff shortage. People went to get empowerment. And Venerable Jigme held the fort, held down the fort. And I don't know, I got a call. I was asked to come down, so I did. And it was just me and Jigme. And it was cool. It was the first time I was in the Psalm of Geshe Michael's 3 retreat and serving the retreaters directly. So I got to spend time with Venerable Jigme and got to see someone, got to hang out with someone that was, um, really fun sense of humor, very hardworking, dedicated, powerful, and seeing the love and devotion of someone that had devoted their life and all their resources to a cause they believed in. And I remember we got to share she shared some poetry that I still read once in a while. And I'll share one of them, 2 of them. Jigme, this is the part you weren't supposed to be here for.
Yeah, those poems were supposed to be anonymous.
Ooh.
When you published them, you put my name on them, and I was quite irritated, just so you know.
Did I not share them? Can I share Crazy Man?
Whatever. Sure. It's too late now to change.
Who made that rule? They were supposed to be anonymous.
You told me. We decided when you were going to publish that book.
I think you should yell at the producer. Okay, this is one of my favorites. Crazy man on the street, railing against some woman who left 4 years ago. Crazy man, can't you see there's no one there? Crazy man, you and I are just about the same. On a crazy man scale of 1 to 10, you're an 8. I'm about a 7.5. Not 100% that's yours. Do you recognize it?
Yeah, that's mine.
Okay.
That was like coming from New York. All the New Yorkers who are here will recognize that there are crazy people on the street.
Yeah. I love it because it shows the degree of craziness is not that big. Okay, one more. Again, I'm not 100% this is yours, but if it's not, it should be. Because I can relate.
Yeah, that's
Well, at least I'd have something. Think you should give me a prize for being the laziest student. Then at least I'd have something. All right. I'm going to share one more. They're so good. Chikma, can I share one more? It's too late. I'm already in trouble. Here we go. Time to go. I used to think that death was on the doorstep of this way house. But now I know we're sitting together having tea. Indeed, we're on our 2nd cup. And soon it will be time to go. Please welcome Venerable Jigme. Jigme, please remember we're being translated, so give them pauses.
Yeah, I know. I tend to I
I
tend
will I will hassle you to slow down if I think we're killing translators.
already.
Other, otherwise, the time is yours. I really appreciate you being here and your friendship and guidance in my life and for showing up. So
Can I talk about what you were doing when you encountered ACI? Or do they already know?
yeah, it's no secrets anymore, I guess.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I've known Earle for a very long time. The first time, well, let's see, maybe we could start with something else. I should introduce myself first. Um, so let's see. I was ordained in 1991 and I met Geshe in 1993, just before he started ACI. And then I was actually the first correspondence course recipient. So I got recordings of his teachings for 2 years, and then I moved from California to New York to study with him.
Just a tiny bit slower, Chile.
Okay,
A little more pauses.
right. So in our group, so I have been ordained the longest of the nuns in our group. Well, of all the ordained people, actually. And so that there's a whole hierarchy thing in within monks and nuns, and it sort of determines who sits where during teachings and things like that. And basically, they're supposed to do what I say, but they don't. And it's the thing about our group is that we've kind of changed the rules in a way. But I do I think I've been a nun longer, so I've been in different circumstances, and so I know more. I have a better idea of how to, um, what we're supposed to be doing. So I do tend to um, try to give advice anyway to the other nuns. We do. There's certain things that we do that are normal for nuns, and then there's a lot of things that we don't do. Um, I don't know. Did you explain how Pratimoksha vows uh, work with the other vows? Because that's
Um,
important,
yeah,
especially.
go for it.
Well, um,
I don't think so. Like I didn't give the Pratimoksha Bodhisattva Tantra
yeah,
vows.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, because that's really important for our group, especially for our group. So Pratimoksha vows. Pratimoksha means to, literally, it means uh, liberation of the individual person. So the point of getting nun's vows, or even all the vows that Earle talked about today, the point of that is to get yourself out of suffering. And so that's the main point of these vows. And what the way it works is that, so there are other vows. Some people only take these vows, and then they'll, in those particular groups, they will keep them very, very strictly. Um, but then there are other vows. There's bodhisattva vows, which probably, hopefully, some of you have taken. Um, and the point of those is to get other people out of suffering, to get everyone out of suffering. So you can understand that that's a higher goal than just getting yourself out of suffering. So the way we work in our group is that, and it's actually, this is the way it's supposed to be, that if you have two different vows, like for example, I'll just say a big deal in some groups is that the nuns will shave their heads and they'll wear their robes all the time. And you'll probably notice that in our group, we don't do that. And the point of that is so we understand, we pay attention to the vow, to the pratimoksha vow, the nun's vow. But in order to teach, or in order to just even walk down the street, we can help people better if we look like them. If we don't, we don't, so we don't have a thing of making ourselves special. We try to make ourselves normal so that we can work with people and help them. So that's a difference in our group and in the way some other groups will keep it very strictly. So if you see that we're not, if you read the nun's vows and you say, oh, well, you're not doing that one and you're not doing that one, it's usually because there's a better reason for not doing that. I think somebody was, oh, I know, actually, we do every 2 weeks, the nuns get together on a Zoom call and we do Sojom, which is the nuns and monks get together and do confession. And if you're in a big group, like if you're in the monastery, you could have 3,000 people in one temple all doing this at once. And what they do, because I used to go in Howell in New Jersey with Ken Rinpoche, we had to go. And so I kind of modeled it on the way he did it, which is they recite a whole bunch of prayers, and you have to recite them in Tibetan from memory. But some of them were translated by Geshe, so those are the ones we do. We do them in our own language, and then we actually talk to each other about what our failings are and what kind of things we've done, and we also rejoice. So I think I'm rambling. Let's see where. So yeah. So I wanted people to understand, because sometimes they ask, why aren't you shaving your head? So that's a very important thing to understand about how the vows go together. And let's see. So the pratimoksha vows are for life. So lay vows are for life, and monks and nuns vows are for life. And the way Geshe Michael in our lineage, he always says that you can't give them back. You've sworn before the Buddhas that you will do these, you'll keep these vows for your life. And so if you give them back, basically you're lying to all the enlightened beings. So he's kind of, in his own mind, he's very strict about this. It doesn't mean a lot of people still give them back. And that's something that is, you can do it. And normally normally it's like, okay, you're no longer a monk or a nun. But then at that point, when you give them back, you don't have any vows anymore. So if you do, you should take lay vows just so that you have some vows. I don't know if this is going to apply to anybody, but just so you understand that. So for example, you have lay vows to start with, and then on top of that, you might take some kind of ordination vow. That kind of erases the lay vow. So there's a hierarchy of these vows. Well, I think it's I guess if there's any questions you can ask me, but the one thing that's important is, and it's got to do with how we do it how Geshe Michael does it, really. he lately especially he has been very reluctant to ordain people. And when I asked him about it, he said that he thinks that often people aren't doing it for the right reasons. And sometimes they'll even say that, like, I think I'll become ordained so that so my students will respect me more. And that isn't the reason for getting ordained. The reason is to get yourself out of suffering. So one of the things that he started doing recently, well, part of it is that we're not dressing, all the time. And there's other reasons. It's because also we're teaching groups of people who their government would have a big problem if a bunch of us showed up with shaved heads, and so that's another problem. But he started ordaining people secretly now. So there are some people in our group who might have those vows, but you'll never know unless they tell you. But for me, it's too late. Everybody knows about me already. Okay. Oh, okay. So now I can go back to how I know Earle. So in 1995, I moved to New York and I was studying with Geshe Michael. And one of the things that was what we had started sending out courses, ACI courses on recorded.
This is great. You don't get that story. Let's see what happens with the internet. Oh
dear, my internet is failing a little bit. Anyway, maybe you're getting off the hook.
I was hoping.
And somebody, they asked me if I could answer one of these letters, and it turned out it was Earle, and he was in custody in I think it was in New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I didn't think much about I mean, I didn't expect that I'd see him again, but then when Geshe Michael was in retreat, he showed up, and and he helped us a lot when because it was a lot of work taking care of that retreat. That it was in the middle of nowhere off. Oh, you have to drive for like an hour and a half just to get groceries, and there was nothing out there. There wasn't water, there wasn't electricity, there was nothing. And so it was a lot of work for us. And after that, it was my responsibility to make sure that there was like 6 retreaters, that they were fed and that they had a place to stay, and that they were undisturbed, and that and it was really hard, and there was a lot of interpersonal stuff going on where it was hard even to get people staffing, people to wash the dishes and help, or any of that stuff. And so what happened was that it was kind of building up in me, and by the end of the time I just wanted to go into retreat myself. So I did a retreat in the garage at Diamond Mountain. And Earle, he says I asked him, but my memory is that he said he was going to take care of me. And so for every day for 10 months, he brought me food that he had made. And I think he only missed one day, which was good. And he told me ahead of time he was going to miss that day. So that was all right. So we have this really close relationship, I mean, I might not see him for a long time, but we have we have this understanding, and we have this history with each other. So I feel very comfortable. If he asks me to teach or something, then even if I don't want to, then I'll do it anyway. I think he would do the same for me.
I hope so. Jigme, I want to
Yeah.
maybe break the ice with a question.
Okay.
God, I have so many questions about it. If you could, let's do this way. What if someone's attracted to more vows, but they're in a relationship? Like, I love this idea of ordination or more vows or a more refined ethical life, but I'm in a relationship. What, not everyone's going to be like you and ditch the relationship for the vows. What, what do we do? What does somebody do in that situation?
I think it's similar to the thing is that you should never take the vows thinking that you're not going to keep them. So that's one thing. But there's there is a hierarchy of vows. So there's the Bodhisattva vows and there's the Diamond Way vows. So it's kind of interesting. You know what I really like about Buddhism is that you have to use your own intelligence. The whole thing hinges on your own understanding of why you're doing something and what the meaning of it is. So if you have so you have to decide for yourself, really. So say I have I have nuns vows. And well, even something as simple as shaving my head, then I have to think, okay, I also have vows to serve others. And I can't really serve people if they think I'm a freak. Of course, you shave your head too, but you're not. It just occurred to me, and maybe I picked the wrong topic. But you have to think about, okay, what's the underlying motivation of the vow? So there's actually sutras, lots and lots of books about where the vows came from. And so, usually there was some reason for it. And if you understand the reason for the vow, then you can use your intelligence. There aren't any police monitoring whether you keep your vows or not, or how you keep your vows. But if you understand the underlying reason and honor that, then you can, it's okay to take vows. It's not a good idea to take a vow knowing that you're not going to keep it, because then actually the vow doesn't take. If you take, like, for example, you took monks' vows and there was one of them that you said, that one I'm not going to keep, then you don't get any of them. It doesn't take in you. So I don't know if that's answering your question, but it might be.
It's helpful. I'll let people jump in, ask your question. If someone speaks in a language you don't know, jump in the interpretation channel. Let's start with, anyone jump in, and if we get silence, we'll go with some things someone wrote in. Don't be shy. Three, two, one. Jigme, I put one in the chat.
Oh, you did?
From somebody that, oops, let me put it in the chat, everyone can see.
Oh, when I lost faith?
Yeah, so someone asked, is there a time that you lost faith or wavered in ordination? What allowed you to reestablish it?
Unfortunately, there hasn't been a time like that. I'd like to be able to say there was, but I think I had a really strong seed from previous lives because I didn't even ask to be ordained. I was like, I was asking, it was at the time I was studying with Lama Sopa at FPMT, and I was planning, I had just quit my job so I could do a Vajrasattva, a 3-month retreat. And I asked him about it. And he said, oh, and then he said, by the way, you should get ordained. And I was like, kind of, I hadn't even thought about it because I was really new. But then I thought, well, sure, why not? So, and then I've never had any question about it since then. So I think maybe he was right. But
Did you have fear of like, oh, I'm going to spend my life not in a relationship, or I'm going to be alone or lonely, or like, I think that's a big fear for people, or I don't get to have sex ever
yeah,
again. Or
yeah. No, it wasn't really. Just my personal history. I come from a family that was extremely overprotective, and so like when I was in high school, I wasn't allowed to go on dates or anything, and we were living far away from everyone. So I learned how to be by myself from a very young age, and it kind of felt normal for me.
mm,
Um, I mean, I've been in relationships and I've been married, and those were never any never met the man, but yeah. Anyway, it's never been a problem.
oh,
Why is there need to shave your head? Someone's asking about why do you need to shave your head? Well, there's a vow to shave your head, and the point of that is um it's meant to demonstrate renunciation so that I'm not attached to the beauty of my hair or it's the same as not wearing jewelry, not singing, not dancing. It's supposed to help you to focus on what's important. And so this all came from 2000 years ago. And especially I think there was already, before Lord Buddha started it, there was already the idea of people who would be renunciates, and they would shave their heads. And so that was culturally already something that existed. And it doesn't so much now. I mean, people don't shave their heads, they might cover their heads. But anyway, that's my understanding of why that vow exists. Oh, yeah, that's one. The why are there more vows for nuns than monks? Well, if you think about in those days, especially when they started it, they didn't want to have uh, there. I mean, it still exists that people will. Men are more powerful than women in culture. Men can overpower women and rape them, and that's a problem. Um, so a lot of the vows for nuns are because you have to be really careful where you go. You can't. A lot of them are things like that, so that you don't get attacked by men. And then there's other vows for nuns that are kind of to suit the culture. Like there's 8 special vows for nuns, for fully ordained nuns, that were Geshe Michael doesn't give those to the nuns, and I never took them either. But they're like, if you've been ordained for 100 years, and a monk who's been ordained yesterday shows up, you're supposed to stand up and bow to them. And a lot of that is for culture, and also expectation, and some of it exists even today. You might, and I think we all kind of, I mean, speaking as a woman, we all tend to kind of understand that men have different expectations than women, even not expressed, but just because that's the culture. Oddly enough, the nuns tend to keep their vows and the monks tend to give them back in general. And I'm not really sure why that is. But it just seems to be the case that we, of the monks I know who have been ordained, there's a few who are still ordained, but most of them don't manage to keep it.
Rosie B, was there a follow-up question? You're good. Jigme Rosie is Sarah's mom. I hope you guys can meet one day. I think you would have a
okay.
long conversations about.
Well, I'm trying not to come across as a raging feminist, but
well, you're talking to the right crowd in Rosie B. But
I could, yeah. If we meet privately, I could probably elaborate.
Cool. There's a bunch more in the chat.
Yeah, I'm reading.
I'll let you just I'll let you just guide, pick and choose, or do what you want.
Okay, has your understanding of the vows continued to get more and more subtle and nuanced over time? And how has your intimacy with the vows evolved after decades of contemplation about these themes? Yeah, my understanding of the vows has become more personal to me, and more, it isn't like something I'm imposing on myself. It's just become the way I see the world. And I think a lot of that is because well, first of all, the first group where I got ordained, they were very strict. And so you keep the vows to the letter. And then you start to understand why are you keeping, and you think about it, because all of a sudden it was weird. When I got ordained, the day I got ordained, I'd been a Buddhist for about a year and a half. And all of a sudden, all these people that I didn't know were coming up and asking me questions, and I barely knew anything at the time. And so there's like these expectations that, and so then you're forced to start to think about, well, you have to quickly start to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And so that's part of it. It becomes more nuanced because you're forced to wrestle with the understanding of what do they mean and why are they doing it. And so also I got a hold of, there's a book translation of the Vinaya Sutra. I can't remember the name of the particular one, but it was translated by a woman back about 100 years ago.
I'm going to ask you to slow down just a touch.
Yeah.
Or pause, a little more pauses.
Okay. So it was translated a while back, and it's about 6 volumes, and I read the whole thing. And what that does is it gives you an understanding. Like, for example, there's one nun's vow. It's my favorite nun's vow. And the vow is that when you're in a monastery and there's a wall around it, and they don't go outside at night to pee, they pee in a bucket, and you're not allowed to throw the urine over the wall without looking first. And so that's actually one of our vows. And then so that gives you an idea of where it came from. Somebody did that. And the whole thing is, all the vows, somebody did those things. And so if you have an understanding of what it is that they did, sometimes it's not obvious. And so the vow might be about one thing, but it's really because of something somebody did. That there's one where we're not supposed to eat garlic. And the story behind that is that there was a farmer who told the nuns that they could have any garlic they want. He was growing garlic, and so they could have it as much as they wanted. And so they picked all of his garlic and went and sold it in the market. So that, therefore, we're not supposed to eat garlic. So, the punishment doesn't really fit the crime. But if you read all these things, then you get an understanding of what the thinking is behind them. And so then it makes it a lot easier to get a feeling for it. And then if something comes up that isn't covered in the vows, you know what to do because you understand how it's supposed to work. Singing and dancing. Oh yeah, okay. Sacred dance, so we're not supposed to sing and dance. And then the Geshe always says, yeah, sacred dance is okay. So sacred singing, sacred dancing is anything that moves you and makes you a better person. Or it could be an expression of your own bliss or whatever. It depends. So in this case, if you're just doing nun's vows, pratimoksha vows, and you don't have bodhisattva vows, then you probably wouldn't be singing or dancing at all. But suppose you have bodhisattva vows and you want to communicate to people, make them feel more comfortable, or communicate a thought to them that comes up in a song, then that's what's defined as sacred singing, sacred dancing. I'm still talking too fast. I have a tendency. I can talk a lot faster than this. Someone trying to keep values. So yeah, to keep pratimoksha and bodhisattva vows, I think the main thing is to understand what the purpose of the vow is. So if you understand what the meaning of the vow is, you also have to understand your own motivation. You have to be honest with yourself, because sometimes it's easy to tell yourself that, oh, it's okay to do this thing, but really you're kind of fooling yourself. So that's another aspect of keeping vows, is that you have to be very honest with yourself. And it kind of helps. That's one of the reasons that we do every 2 weeks we do monks confession, monks and nuns. Well, it's really just the nuns. We don't have too many monks. They can do their own confession. That's how it's supposed to be, because we have different vows. But it helps. Like yesterday we did sojong, and there's a couple new nuns, and so we had a whole discussion about pretty much about this, and what is the purpose of the vows, and how do you keep them when you're living a different life from the people who they were made for. But the main thing is to understand your motivation. So the motivation for pratimoksha vows is to get your own get your own happiness, your own freedom from suffering. And bodhisattva is to do that for everyone else. So they don't really conflict.
I'm curious about that discussion that you said you're having. Like, how do you find relevance, or how do you keep vows that were designed for people thousands of years ago in a very different culture, a very different time? What's the future of ordination, and how do we, or do we, and how do we reculturalize the idea of ordination? Because if we don't, will it just be lost as something that's not culturally relevant anymore?
Right.
And I know that's been a lot of discussion with you know, Geshe Michael, even simple things like when we were living in the desert, the robes are completely inappropriate for someone living in Arizona. So what does ordination look like in the future in a different culture?
Yeah, that's something that actually he does interpret the vows differently from most of the really basic uh groups of ordained people. And the whole idea is to integrate it along with the other vows. And it's actually something I've been trying to document and trying to preserve, and among too many other things I'm trying to do all at once. But yeah, I think for us, it's difficult because it's not really defined how we do it. It's more just kind of like watching, seeing how people keep their vows. Um, I think I've lost the thread of what you're asking, or did I
Well,
answer it?
we have a tradition that comes from, you know, an enlightened being or a Buddha.
Right.
How do we change tradition? How do we culturalize an ordination tradition? Like, is that appropriate? And if it is, what do we do in the West to make it something that perhaps is more relatable?
Well, okay, one thing that occurs to me is that all of the teachers I've ever had say that the best way to become enlightened is to be ordained, to take the ordination vows. And then they also say, oh, okay, but you also have these other vows. And then there's uh, a discrepancy there, how do you keep them all? And that's one of the things I like about Buddhism, is that you have to use your own intelligence and figure it out for yourself, because it's different for everyone. If you understand the meaning of the purpose of the vow, then it's not so difficult to figure out, okay, I have, just like what Geshe, his example of, like, you're not supposed to keep cloth for more than 10 days unless you turn it into a robe. So that's okay. That means you're not supposed to hoard stuff. But then there's the bodhisattva vow to uh, give stuff to people, help people who don't have things. So then it becomes okay, and even it the motivation is higher. So then the way you interpret the vow is higher, and so then you have to understand the whole thing is it's forcing you. It's actually preferable, because otherwise you might not think about, why am I doing these things? But if you got two conflicting directions, then you're forced to think, well, okay, where do I stand with this? What's my motivation? What am I trying to do with my life? And then every time it comes up, you have to think about it. And so it really actually helps to make the vows stronger, because you have to think about them. Somebody's asking, Karina is asking about singing and dancing. And so this is another thing to think about. Why did they make that a vow? It's because, as a nun, you're not supposed to, go to parties and get singing and dancing and getting drunk. And, it's just that tends to loosen up your, it tends to make it easier to do other things. But singing and dancing, as I mentioned before, it does, it's allowed if you're expressing, like, if you're expressing something that makes you, it gives you a higher feeling. If you're expressing your joy at, you know, you've helped somebody or somebody is happy, yeah, sure, it's allowed. It's just, so again, you have to think of why am I doing this? Um, and be honest with yourself, because lots of times it's easy to fool yourself. You know, there's this one vow, um, with monks and nuns, you're not supposed to eat after noon. And so, you know, it's easy to fool yourself and say, okay, well, you know, this is okay because of whatever, and it is okay because of various, you know, it is okay, so, because our culture is different, but you have to think about why is that. And you can't just say, oh, I'm not going to do it. You have to think, well, how does that fit with our lifestyle and what I'm trying to accomplish in terms of helping, you know, in terms of getting the whole world enlightened. Oh, Sarah's asking about pratimoksha vows. Uh, pratimoksha vow to get yourself out of suffering, and bodhisattva vows to get everyone out of suffering. Does that mean that monks and nuns just do all of that faster? Yeah, I think so. That's, I never really asked them, and I was always like, to me, what it seems is that that because you're forced to think about how you're presenting yourself and how you're thinking, it just kind of forces you to pay more attention. Also, everybody's looking at you, and you know they're asking you questions, and then that also forces you to think about it. So I think that's part of it. Um, Sarah, you want to just turn on your mic and we can discuss it? That might be easier.
No, I think you answered it. I was just curious as to why do the monk or nun's vows instead of the other sets of vows if they all have the same motivation. But it sounds like what you're saying is that with the monk and nun's vows, there's more opportunity to refine every little thing you're doing.
Yeah, that's true. And the motivation is different for each set of vows. So the monks and nuns vows, get yourself out of suffering. The bodhisattva vows is to get everyone out of suffering. And the diamond way vows is to do it as fast as possible. We're not even talking about that here because it's an ACI course, but you know, so yeah, and if you have all of them, then you have to kind of like pay attention to how do they mix together. And so I don't know, I kind of like puzzles. So for me, I enjoy the challenge. I think some people maybe it's difficult because they're very literal about the way they see the world. Are there any other questions? If not, it's back to you, Earle.
I've got a bunch.
Oh,
You're not
God.
off the hook yet.
Okay.
I do know that I only committed you up until now. If you do have to go, please do. If you can stay the last 15 minutes, I would love that.
Sure, why not?
Thank you. Okay. The best thing about being ordained, the worst thing about being ordained, and what advice you would have for somebody that was thinking about ordination.
Well, the best thing about being ordained is, I think what we've discussed is it kind of forces you to be honest with yourself about and knowing that you have this lifetime vow, it I don't know, it just forces you to be more honest with yourself. And it also, the tendency is for people to have expectations. So that is the worst thing and also the best thing. Because if
Like
people
you got to
are,
be on your best behavior all the time.
yeah, exactly. Or no, why not?
Uh-huh.
So yeah, there's that. What was the third part again?
Yeah, just what advice you would give to someone
yeah.
that had studied a bit of Vinaya or had been thinking about ordination, and what advice you would have for somebody that was thinking about it.
I never really thought about it. For me, I I went to Catholic schools as a child, and I never wanted to be a nun. I thought that was a horrible choice. But and I didn't think about being a Buddhist nun, but then it just kind of presented itself, and so that's not really typical. I think people usually think about it first. Um, what advice? I'd probably tell them not to do it. The thing is that if you don't have the motivation yourself, if you have to ask, then you probably shouldn't do it, really.
You,
But it would be important to understand exactly what's involved. I think that's the main thing.
yeah. So how does that happen? Because would that be finding a teacher or ordained community? And because we can't really study the vows all that well, how do you find out more? Like, let me
Yeah.
ask it a different way, maybe. You've seen people get ordained, and some people thrive, and some people give their vows back.
Mm-hmm.
What's the have you been able to see, like, this is what makes people succeed, or makes people fail, or like, so I'm thinking about ordination.
You are?
No, well, I have.
Yeah.
I asked Geshe Michael once about it.
What did he say?
And it was interesting. It was exactly what you said in a way. I asked him, and we were in Mexico,
Hmm.
and I said, Geshe, every time I debate myself about the fastest way to get enlightened, I always come up with, well, you should get ordained. That would
Mm-hmm.
be the fastest way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't quite ask him for vows, but I kind of got as close as I could without asking him.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you can't intellectualize your way into vows. You can't just logic your way into vows. You have to want it.
Mm.
And like you just said, like, you have to really want it. And he said, you already live mostly ordained. And he gave me 3 other things to focus on. But yeah, that's what he said. And very similar to what you said. You can't logic your way into ordination. Like, you have to want it,
Mm-hmm.
or it's just not going to work.
Yeah, I think so. I know he has mentioned before that well, one of the things is you got to make sure that you're willing or that you want to keep all of them. And the motivation is really important. There like one person mentioned to me that the reason they got ordained was so that their students would be more respectful. And um that's not, those vows probably didn't even take, because that's not the right motivation. So you have to be really clear on what your motivation is. And I think that's the main thing. Why and I think with people in our time, that probably have been ordained for many lifetimes before, and so you have a really good idea of what to expect. So I think that's really it. It's just like, oh yeah, this is what you do with your life. It's just obvious. And I think that then maybe someone like you 50-50, you're drawn to both sides. And then I guess you have to think about it.
Yeah.
Or sometimes people wait until they're really old and then they get ordained. And that way or if you get a fatal disease or something, and then, your motivation changes. And it's not really the best motivation for getting ordained, but heck, I mean, at least you have those vows at some time in your life.
Yeah.
So that's,
The Bodhisattva vows where you can take it in the form of an intention and then take them for real. Is there a tradition to kind of live ordained for a while first before taking the vows? Didn't Geshe Michael do that with Rinpoche?
Yeah, I don't think he
Like-
did it wasn't anything official. I think he just tried to keep the vows.
Yeah.
But then I know other people who have taken 1-day vows, and you can actually take them every day for as long as you want. And there's a precedent for saying, okay, I'm going to take these vows for the next 9 months or whatever it is. So it's similar. You can take those 8 vows, and those are pretty much the essence of the monks and nuns vows. So that's one thing you can do. Geshe gave us all at Diamond, well, not me, but you guys at Diamond Mountain. He gave celibacy vows for 3 months, and that's another thing. You can do something like that.
7 minutes, my friends. Don't let her off the hook.
I have a picture of all of you guys with your white robes on after you took the vows. I could maybe send it to your class if you.
It's gonna be embarrassing, Jigme, because I was one of 5 people that didn't do it.
You didn't do it? Oh, that would be even more embarrassing. I didn't do it either. But I already had the vows. Yeah, looks like I'm
Off the hook.
off the hook.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, and it's a breath of fresh air in the Vinaya class to get to have a conversation with you. And I hope that if people reflect and do have questions, there's a lot of resources in the extended community, and Venerable Jigme has been a resource for people on many, many levels for many years, not just Vinaya, but like how to really serve a teacher and all of the ups and downs that can bring. And I've just seen, there's a few people that I go to for advice.
I think I go to you for advice occasionally too, don't I? I think so. Yeah.
We also use each other to vent. That's great.
It's true.
You need a friend that you can vent to.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a really bad memory. So if you can tell me things and I'll forget them right away.
But just, someone that's really, I think, brings the community up. And I hope that if somebody needs a friend or somebody to reach out to, she has been that for many, many people. So thank you for being here, and I appreciate it.
Sure. It's nice to see all of you.
Cool. We have 5 minutes. Let's end it on that note. I don't want to, I'd like to end on that note. So really encourage you we blew through the classwork. So again, I really encourage you to go back and have a little deeper look, and then to reflect on, not lose sight of the essence of this course. We're now transitioning out of Vinaya. The last 3 classes will be Lamrim. So let's not, leave it behind. I think one of the cool messages today for me was, Jigme's experience of the ordination vows, of the refinement and the having to use our intelligence of evaluating what we do. And that's been a big theme of the whole Vinaya. What are our core values? Using these ideas as a template, all of the Pratimoksha vows. We looked at other traditions. We looked at establishing our own core values. And then we looked at how to keep them, how to track them, how to keep them. And for me, a little more motivation today to, even though I don't have the ordination vows, to take that essence of really, how can I refine what I do and ask why? Why am I doing what I'm doing? I guess my point is, we have the opportunity as we study Vinaya, where hopefully the motivation is higher to look at our ethical life, our principles, our core values, and to have some incentive and resolve to make some changes now. Our mind is in Vinaya. What changes do I want to make? How can I revisit those core elements of renunciation and refuge? And like Jigme said, like she shared, like that's just kind of how I see the world now. How can we live those principles so much that it's who we are? And to take this opportunity and this inspiration to dive into our own personal world of Vinaya, whatever that looks like for us, Buddhist or not Buddhist, it doesn't really matter. What's our values? Am I living up to them? What inspiration can I take to live closer to those values that we've established? So again, thank you, Jigme, and thank you all for being here. And thank you for everyone that's sharing in the chats, their ideas and their thoughts and their questions. We have 3 more classes, so please let's keep going, and we'll transition into the long run. Thank you so much. Thanks, Jigme. See y'all on Friday.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Earle. Thank you so much, Venerable Jigme. Thank you, the team, translators, recorders, and everyone. Yay. Great job. Thank you all for showing up. See you on Friday.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Karina.